Listen up, Panthers faithful. We have spent months questioning if our young wide receiver could actually handle the heat, and honestly, the situation was looking grim. But hold your horses, because things are finally starting to shift in a direction that might just save our offense this season. We're hearing some massive updates regarding his work ethic and connection with our quarterback that could change everything. Is this finally the breakthrough we have all been desperate to see? You need to hear this update right now. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Is he the real deal? Xavier Legette is at a definitive crossroads with the Carolina Panthers, facing a pivotal moment where his professional runway is effectively reaching its absolute limit. Since entering the league, Legette has statistically struggled, ranking among the least productive qualified receivers in the entire sport. This reality has placed him under an intense microscope, as observers have frequently questioned whether his opportunities have already exceeded his on-field production. The urgency of this situation is not lost on the receiver, who has spoken extensively throughout this offseason regarding his commitment to avoid repeating the subpar performance of his previous campaign. The stakes are undeniably high as the franchise has introduced legitimate competition into the wide receiver room, specifically with the arrival of Chris Brazell and the continued presence of Jimmy Horn Jr. Both players are actively vying for the WR3 role, creating a competitive environment that leaves zero room for stagnation. For Legette, this pressure serves as the ultimate test of his character and development. It is a classic sports narrative where the environment will either forge a diamond or cause the athlete to crumble under the weight of expectation. While the jury has remained out on his ability to transition potential into consistent production, the internal feedback emerging from the facility provides an interesting perspective on his current trajectory. He is currently navigating the most critical stretch of his tenure, understanding that the Panthers are no longer interested in providing excessive patience without visible results. As the team prepares for the upcoming season, all eyes remain fixed on whether this sense of impending consequence will finally translate into the game-changing impact that the organization needs from him to elevate the passing attack. Keep pounding. The skepticism surrounding Xavier Legette has been well documented, with various critiques suggesting he should be moved down the depth chart or traded entirely to clear roster space. Coverage of his shortcomings has been consistent, reflecting a fan base and media contingent that has grown tired of waiting for a breakthrough that seemed perpetually out of reach. However, the current situation regarding his preparation and mental approach suggests that a shift is finally taking place. According to reporting from Joe Person of The Athletic, both coaches and teammates are observing a much more disciplined and refined game from Legette. The previous mishaps that defined his early career are being addressed with a newfound level of professional maturity. This development is essential because the mental side of the game is often the bridge between raw athleticism and actual success in the NFL. Beyond just individual efforts, Legette is now engaging in what are being described as next-level conversations with quarterback Bryce Young. These discussions regarding specific route running, offensive concepts, and defensive leverages represent the granular details that typically separate successful receivers from those who fail to catch on. The fact that he is vocalizing an understanding of his precarious position is a positive indicator that he is no longer operating in a vacuum of false confidence. During a recent Zoom call, Legette sounded exactly like a player who recognizes that his window of opportunity is closing rapidly. While it is true that talking is only the first step, the consistency of these reports from minicamp suggests a change in his operational baseline. He is not just reciting generic responses. He is exhibiting the behavior of an athlete who understands the gravity of his professional situation in Carolina. Why does this matter right now for the Panthers? The team's offensive success is inherently tied to the development of the receiving core, and the ceiling of the entire unit depends on whether these depth options can provide reliable targets for Bryce Young. Last year, Young demonstrated an elite ability to deliver the ball, leading the league in big-time throw rate and PFF grade on deep passes. Despite this talent, the production was often limited by the inability of receivers to secure those deep balls consistently. If Xavier Legette can finally synthesize his off-field improvements into on-field execution, he becomes a primary beneficiary of Young's specific skill set. The presence of Chris Brazell adds another layer of intrigue, as the battle for the WR3 spot forces both players to maximize their output during every single rep. If both can emerge as viable, high-level options, the dynamic of the offense changes entirely, creating the necessary spacing and vertical threats that were missing throughout the previous season. This is not merely about one player's job security, it is about the fundamental efficiency of the offensive scheme. The Panthers are actively seeking the right chemistry between their quarterback and the receivers tasked with running these routes. By ironing out the mental mistakes and mastering the concepts Young prefers, Legette is attempting to solve a major inefficiency that hindered the team previously. The concern that he might be a bust is finally beginning to fade, replaced by a cautious optimism that he is learning the nuances of the professional game. The focus now shifts strictly to the transition of these concepts from the practice field to live game speed situations where the pressure of the NFL regular season will be applied to his performance. The transition from off-field promise to on-field production is the final hurdle for Xavier Legette. For months, the consensus was that he was falling behind, but the current reports suggest that the negative trends are being reversed. Having the ability to hold complex discussions with Bryce Young about leverages and route concepts indicates that Legette is processing information at the speed required by a professional offense. This represents a significant deviation from his earlier struggles, where the transition from collegiate play to the NFL seemed to overwhelm his decision-making process. The coaching staff and his teammates are now witnessing a version of Legette that is more calculated, focused, and aligned with the team's schematic requirements. While it is vital to remember that these improvements have occurred during the controlled environment of minicamp, the consistency is noteworthy compared to his previous off-seasons. The intensity he is bringing to these sessions is not accidental. It is the direct result of understanding that the franchise has already begun scouting potential replacements and exploring internal competition like Chris Brazzell and Jimmy Horn Jr. This creates a high-stakes environment that is forcing the necessary evolution in Legette's game. He is effectively playing for his future in the NFL every time he steps onto the practice field, and the feedback loop between the coaches and his performance indicates that he is finally responding to that pressure in a productive way. If he continues to demonstrate this level of commitment, the Panthers will have a difficult decision regarding the depth chart, moving from a position of searching for answers to a position of having to choose between multiple viable candidates. This evolution is the exact process the team envisioned when they initially drafted him to be a contributor. Moving forward, all eyes will be locked on how Xavier Legette performs when the pads come on and the game speed intensifies. The narrative of him potentially being a lost cause is being rewritten, but the final chapter will not be written until he produces in legitimate game action. The Carolina Panthers have made it clear through their roster moves that they are not a team that will wait forever for a receiver to develop, which adds a layer of absolute finality to this upcoming opportunity. The fact that he is currently having next-level conversations with Bryce Young is the most encouraging development, as it shows he is finally utilizing the tools at his disposal to improve his technical game. Whether he turns into the receiver the organization expects or simply becomes another example of unrealized potential remains the central question of his tenure. However, based on the reports from the staff and his teammates, the signs of growth are there, and the self-described mishaps are being addressed with a level of seriousness that was clearly lacking in the past. This maturity is necessary as the competition from the likes of Chris Brazzell and Jimmy Horn Jr. will not be relenting anytime soon. If Legette can solidify his standing and prove that these off-field improvements are legitimate, he will solidify his spot and provide the offensive unit with the vertical component it needs to succeed. The transformation is underway, and while the path to redemption is long and difficult, the first steps have been taken. The Panthers need him to continue this progress to ensure that the offense reaches its maximum potential in the current season, and the weight of the organization's trust in this position remains the ultimate motivator for his continued development.